Alright.
Yes,
Okay, just now I saw a few others yang masuk tu, saya pun dah ambil siap-siap dia punya attendance. Tapi nevertheless, you know, I was told that Rania is taking over from Izati. Mana Rania? Raina ke Rania?
Raina.
Raina. Raina, you're international student or Malaysian?
I'm Malaysian.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Raina. Mustaqim is recording kan, you know, could you please just on your side you still do another attendance list but do an Excel, okay? I would really appreciate it if you can do this, okay? You take a class list, okay, and then you just put week number 1 until number 14, and then you just mark, okay, put some just mark it, okay, and then share it with me every few weeks or so.
Okay, right? Through WhatsApp or how?
No. What you can do is you can make it a live document. You just do the Excel and then you share the Excel to my email, so that I can open it anytime I want. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Okay. That'll be good. Thank you, Raina. I think just buat everybody inside now. Okay. Sekarang 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 kali 30 sini. 25. About 50 dah pun. Okay. 49. Okay. Alright, I think everybody is in. Good morning. Thank you for coming in at 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm not sure whether this can prolong though, you know, because sometimes I do have meetings on Friday mornings. Luckily for now, I don't have anything going on. Actually, I do have a meeting this morning, but never mind lah. You know. We'll go on for as long as we can this morning, and then I have to enter the meeting anyways. So, okay, perhaps can, you know, next week Friday, I don't have anything going on in the morning, so we can have class in the morning. But the week after, I've got faculty meeting in the morning, so we have to go back to afternoon. Tapi itulah, you know, every month at least once lah or twice, I will have meetings in the morning. So, you know, we can have 2 sessions in the morning, 2 sessions in the afternoon, ataupun we can just keep it all in the afternoon kind of thing. So perhaps I'll throw it back to you lah, you know. When I check back my calendar, I think it's best if we keep it to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so that it doesn't clash with my meetings. Because meetings are a bit difficult for me to reschedule because I don't control it, you know, somebody else does it. And usually on Fridays, other people do not have any classes, you know. But I do have a class which is with you. Jadi perhaps, you know, if we can keep it in the afternoon, it would be great lah. But nevertheless, you can talk with your friends. We can do it like this, you know, the first 2 weeks in the the first week, usually the faculty meeting happens in the first week of every month on a Friday morning. So, you know, first week we'll have to do it in the afternoon. Second week and third week we'll do it in the morning, and fourth week you can do it back in the morning, in the afternoon. Because, you know, in the fourth week I will have a high degree committee meeting, okay, talking about you guys and all the others lah, okay, all the postgraduate students, right? So I might have to you know, we might have to revert back to afternoon, okay? So tak apa, I'll let you discuss among your friends. But this morning I'm gonna do the lecture first. Okay, Mustaqim, you're already recording. Thank you very much. Morning, lecture number 2 and number 3. Last week I already did 1.5 lectures kind of thing. So today I'll try to cram in. I'll try to do 1. Okay. It's about environmental degradation and the urban built environment. You need to know the context, you know, why you have to go towards green architecture. Otherwise, you know, you will not, you won't be aware of what is going on. Okay. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. So this is the content of the topic. Okay. We have this worldwide thing which is going on, which is called environmental degradation, right? Everywhere you see pollution, everywhere you see degradation to the environment, people are exploiting the earth, technically, okay? Not just using it, but exploiting it for their own good. But the problem is, once they start to exploit the environment, you get irreparable damage. Okay, irreparable damage. And then right now we're experiencing a lot of urban heat island effect. And then, as you probably know, even in Malaysia right now, almost 70% of the population are living in cities. Okay, we have come a long way. Before you were born, okay, in 1990s, when I was still a teenager, technically, during that time, the majority of the population in Malaysia lives outside the urban centers. Okay, it was only like 30%, 35% tops at that time. There are really good data that we can refer to, but nevertheless, it's about 30% of the population living within city areas. But having said that, jump forward about 30 years, about 70% now living in the cities. And that's a complete reversal of what happened about 30 years ago, okay? And then 30 years ago, you could still enjoy some beautiful scenery, really clean rivers, really clean sea waters, beaches. It was totally different from now. Right now, there's a lot of pollution, a lot of air pollution, a lot of water pollution, river pollution everywhere, okay? And then you've been hearing a lot about river pollution for the past month alone, okay? Causing a lot of water disruption in Selangor and KL and Putrajaya again. Okay, and then having said that, even other places such as in Seberang Perai the other day, in Perak also crying foul, in Johor also crying foul, with the really bad quality of the river water. And then if you go back last year, for instance, people were poisoned through effluents being put out, being thrown away into the river in Pasir Gudang. Okay, and then, but having said that, nobody got persecuted, which is really, really upsetting. Okay, not interesting, but upsetting. Why nobody got persecuted? Why the law did not, the long arm of the law did not catch all these people? Having said that, for the past month, there were 2 incidents of river pollution, and then the law manages to catch all these environmental thieves, if you can call them, right? So the law of the land has to cope with the current demands, the current situations. And hopefully very soon, really tough environmental laws will be passed in the parliament. Okay, so that is a big problem. People will pollute, they will exploit. They simply just do whatever they want. They throw it into the rivers. They do whatever they want. They will emit all the gases and whatnot, noxious gases into the air, right? They make as much noise as they want. They don't really care about others, right? So there's a missing value here, which is respect to other people, and for most importantly, respect to the environment. Okay, and then but having said that, indirectly, because of the boom in urban population, in the expansion of the cities, we have this urban heat island effect going on, and then this heat island effect is as much as 3 to 4 to 5 degrees centigrade. Once you enter Kuala Lumpur, if you don't notice, if your car that you drive, have got this thermometer on it, on the dashboard, you'll see, even from there, you can see like 3 or 4 degrees of increase once you enter into the urban area of Kuala Lumpur. It's just alarming. But if you do real scientific measurements, yes, it's true. Okay, the amount of temperature difference goes up to 5 degrees, and minimum technically. But in the heat of the day, right in the middle of the afternoon, like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it could go as much as 8 degrees. That's the reason why, if you don't notice, Kuala Lumpur gets a lot of precipitation, gets a lot of stormy weather, kan? There's a lot of thunderstorms going on in Kuala Lumpur. Whereas if you go out of Kuala Lumpur, you go to Nilai or Seremban, those thunderstorms, what's going on? There's only like 50 kilometers away. So it means that this heat island effect which is going on in Kuala Lumpur is really affecting the microclimate of Kuala Lumpur. To some people, it's good lah. You get some cool respite lah. From the heat, getting from the rain. But having said that, too much rain will also cause other problems, right? Like flash floodings and a few other things as well. But having said that, it shows real, not to say damage lah, real influence on the environment. By having this big heat island effect going on in Kuala Lumpur. You go to Kuala Terengganu, different. You don't get the urban heat island effect. You know, for once, perhaps because it's located by the seaside. Secondly, the urban center is quite sparse. Okay, you go to Kota Baru, again, same, very sparse. All right. Whereas, you know, if you go to Penang, Penang is a bit strange because Penang is situated on an island. It has got this unique microclimate kind of thing. So the urban heat island effect that happens in Penang, you know, is mitigated pretty much by the nice cool breezes coming in from the sea. It's not like in Kuala Lumpur. Kuala Lumpur is perhaps the most obvious kind of example of this heat island effect going on in Malaysia lah. The other one is the reduction in carrying capacity. You know, so once you have far too much amount of population, okay, if you look at Malaysia as a whole, you know, East and West Malaysia, Sabah, Sarawak, everything together, the vast majority of the population of Malaysia, which is around 20 million or so, you know, about 25 million in fact, are living on Peninsular Malaysia, okay, and mostly concentrated on the west coast of Peninsular Malaysia. And then this causes the amount of food that you have to produce, you know, to really spike. And then, you know, we had to import a lot of food from everywhere. We have to import food within the country from other places, perhaps from Sabah and Sarawak, and also import it from the east coast of Malaysia and import it from overseas, right? In order to sufficiently provide for the population. And then, you know, with the increase of the amount of food production, right? The amount of arable, the amount of virgin land, the amount of forests will have to reduce. Okay, so technically, there's a lot of forests and jungles, you know, that has been taken over by plantations. For instance, like oil palm plantations, rubber for a long time, and then now, you know, other crops are coming in as well. And at the same time, you know, a lot of these land are being open. A lot of the jungles are being open for housing development, for other things as well, to expand the cities. So, you know, that reduces the carrying capacity if you look at ecological footprint, okay, as a means of looking at how much the environment can provide for us. Okay, the carrying capacity of Malaysia is almost like, you know, we need 2 Malaysias if you look at the numbers being produced by world bodies right now. So the land area of Malaysia, 2 land areas of Malaysia, just to, you know, sufficiently provide for our own population. And then I briefly touched on the loss of land for cultivation. The amount of arable land as well, you know, for cultivation is reducing. For once, because of flooding. Secondly, the amount of seawater coming into the coming onto land, okay, and flooding certain areas that are actually good for farming. So once you get seawater, that's it. The land is, you know, it's wasted. You won't be able to use it for farming anymore. And at the same time, there's a lot of waste dumping by people, okay, within the urban centers. And then, you know, all these waste are being dumped into areas which are considered as sensitive. And at the end of the day, you know, these areas were supposed to be, you know, otherwise it's a jungle or forest. Rather than dumping waste into it or dangerous chemicals and whatnot, it could have been used for farming instead. But, you know, having said that, there have been some positives going on. You know, for instance, if you don't notice, I think about a week ago or 2 weeks ago, the Pahang government declared there's one river that runs through Cameron Highlands, you know, the main important river. There was wreaking havoc on the people for a few years, you know, a few years back, because of flash floodings, and a few people got killed and whatnot. And then it's heavily polluted as well. Reason being, there were too many vegetable farms at the far end of the river. Okay, polluting the river, leaching it with a lot of pesticides and other things. And then at the same time, the water turned yellow because there's no all the rain will simply just go straight into the river without being stopped by the trees. So, you know, the water was not being absorbed into the land. So the river turned yellow. And then at the same time, when it rains really hard, flash flooding occurred on Cameron Highlands for all of the places. You know, this is high up in the mountains, you know, and then people got killed. But having said that, the Pahang government, they did a really drastic measure whereby they closed down every single one of those vegetable farms, which were along the river. Okay. And then by doing so, for the last 1 year plus, okay, they closed down everything. They replanted all the vegetable gardens with trees and seedlings and everything else. And then now the river water, which was like class 4 previously, class 4 means it's worst. You get class 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. And then most of our rivers in the Klang Valley right now is sitting at class 3, which is really, really bad. Class 4, it was really heavily polluted with pesticides and other things. So, and then the same water was being used to not just irrigate the farms, but also to be processed as clean water for the people to use. So the people were really sick. But they declared, I think about a week ago or 2 weeks ago, that the water now is at class 1 and safe enough to drink straight away without even boiling it. Okay, they were showing it on the news. The water was clear, is clear, nice and clear and beautiful. Okay, so that's a major breakthrough lah, to me lah, if I look at things in Malaysia, really combating the environmental crimes that has been done before. So even though you might lose a little bit, you do lose some food production. But having said that, the rivers are clean now. The people are happy. You will not get any flash floodings anymore. Fantastic, right? And then we are also, I also touched a little bit on the scarcity of resources. I mentioned that we had to import the food from overseas. But besides food, there are also other resources that we need that we are fully importing from overseas. Okay. Yes, right now we do have global trade going on. Okay, and then trade is well interconnected. All countries are interconnected with each other, and no doubt everybody will have to be importing or exporting at the same time. So we do import a lot of stuff from everywhere. Okay, we do import a lot of stuff from China, from Japan, from India, from everywhere else. We import all kinds of things, millions of stuff. Okay, so it's well interconnected. And then at the same time, this is because we perhaps don't have enough technology to manufacture our own, or we do not have the resources to do such a thing. For instance, like cheese, for instance. Yes, we do produce a little bit of cheese. We do eat a lot of cheese, but a lot of these cheeses are being imported from other countries such as Australia or New Zealand. Okay, and then beef, for that matter, we eat a lot of beef. Okay, but we import most of it from other countries like India, like Australia again. And then like rice, even rice is a staple of our country. The majority of people eat rice, isn't it? But our own rice production can only cover about 35% of the population. So where is the rest coming from? Two resources. One is they've been stockpiled. Okay, so we stockpile some of the rice that we produce. So over the years, it has built up quite an amount. And because of that stockpile, we are able to cover the population. But having said that, it's still not enough. The remainder, like another 20 or 30% of our rice that is being consumed every year is being imported from Vietnam, from India, from Cambodia, from a few other countries as well, from Thailand, of course. So it shows that there's a lot of scarcity in our resources, right? We have to import from somewhere else. We can't produce enough. Okay, even if let's say you are to open Sarawak, for all this. If you go back, when you were a bit young, okay, our I think 5th Prime Minister of 6th Prime Minister, Tun Abdullah, okay, Tun Abdullah, he championed the idea of opening up Sarawak as the food bowl of Malaysia. The idea is to open up millions of hectares of land in order to produce enough food for the whole country. Okay, it's called food security, which is something which is being championed by many countries. In fact, Thailand, for instance, is a really good example. They have food security because they are able to produce enough food for everybody in their own country and export the surplus. In our case, we don't have that. We only have food security for a few items, but we don't have food security for our main staples. So Tun Abdullah wanted to open up Sarawak, and things were happening at that time, but I'm not sure how much amount of land has been opened since then. But there are a lot of challenges though, you know. Once you want to start opening up big amount of land for cultivation of food, you have to do a lot of infrastructure development. You have to definitely pollute the earth, you know, definitely have to exploit the earth in order to get that. And then, you know, peat swamp, peat land, some forests, whatnot, will have to go in order to make way for rice paddy fields, right? So in order to get food security, you're gonna have to sacrifice the environmental integrity. So there's a lot of balancing act that you need to do technically, okay? And then because of that, you get biodiversity loss. I think the other day the Prime Minister mentioned in his speech in when he was opening iGEM, okay, the yearly green technology expo that happens in KLCC, but this year is done everything online. He mentioned that we are one of the top 8 in the world, you know, when it comes to biodiversity. You know, what does biodiversity means? It means that, you know, we have a whole, you know, selection of flora and fauna, thousands and thousands of species, richer than anybody else. Okay, it is because perhaps we are one of those countries which are located in the tropics. Okay, but having said that, you know, a lot of our virgin forests, you know, especially on Peninsula, everything else has been cultivated for something else. Okay, turned into housing, turned into cities, turned into farming and whatnot. But if you go to Sabah and Sarawak, especially Sabah lah, okay, Sabah has got this Maliau Basin. Okay, Maliau Basin is a wonderful place. It's like the Eden of the world. You know, it's like heaven kind of thing. Over there, you get huge array of animals, flora and fauna, and many different kinds of species of plants and trees. One of the richest biodiversity domes on Earth. Okay, we can still hold on to that because it's so remote. You won't be able to develop it. But having said that, you know, the periphery, you know, for instance, I give you like Tahan, our national park on the Peninsula Malaysia. If you take a short flight from Kuala Lumpur, from Subang Airport to Kota Baru, let's say, you know, on Firefly or on Malindo, you should be able to look down on your right hand side and see that Gunung Tahan is just Gunung Tahan, still green and nice, but everything around it is brown or turned into cities, which is almost shocking. Okay, and this has been going on for a long time. You know, development doesn't take one day; it takes decades, right? And then only very recently we came to aware that, you know, in Raub Pahang, you know, thousands of hectares has been opened up for durian farming. How is that possible? You know, how can they go and go in and cut down all these virgin forests and plant durian trees? Yeah, trees, of course, they still absorb carbon, but it's for their own economic benefit, you know, to the detriment of other people. Technically, they're exploiting it. So, you know, if we do eat durian musang king from Raub, let's say, from land which has been illegally produced, so it's wrong. Yeah, ethically it's wrong, right? So something has to be done. So, you know, for instance, like the Perak government, let's say, you know, the Perak government has been actively looking into weeding out all these illegal farmers. You know, they've got thousands of hectares of land in Perak which has been cultivated for farming of food illegally. So what they have been doing, they've been going out to the rural areas, finding out all these land, all these people, and try to look for solutions. Okay, solutions either to kick them out, replant the place, or to make them legal, right? So people have to have this kind of respect, you know, to the environment, which, you know, somehow or other we are losing that. So because of the loss of arable land and, you know, things such as that one, you know, and at the same time, because of the boom in the population, you have to look into the supply and demand of energy and water as well. You know, once you get boom in population, there will be a boom in the energy demand as well. So definitely you have to build more power plants. Definitely have to import more coal from somewhere else, from Australia, let's say, you know, to burn and generate electricity. Otherwise, you have to go into solar panels. And I think I mentioned solar panels previously. If you go to Kelai area, or perhaps, you know, going to Pahang, you can see there's a number of solar farms being constructed. It has been constructed in Malaysia, which is a good thing. You go back 10 years ago, you know, you don't see such a thing. But now you can see some solar panels going on, and even TNB, you know, perhaps the biggest polluter in Malaysia, we rely a lot on them. You know, they are the monopoly they hold the monopoly on our energy generation. But having said that, and they are the biggest polluter, of course, okay, because they have a number of power plants underneath their belt, under their control. So there are also some independent power producers in Malaysia as well, you know, who are polluting the earth. But they're essential. We need them, you know. So we can't simply just get rid of them very easily. So it's slowly you're gonna have to change them to other means, you know, other renewable sources of energy. For instance, like TNB also has got a lot of hydroelectric dams. Okay, so they're moving towards that. About 20% of our energy comes from hydroelectric nowadays. And then, you know, slowly they're building up the portfolio, the solar generation portfolio, bit by bit. I think it's going up to about 7% now, you know, which is very tiny, okay, in comparison to the commitment made by earlier governments that we are to be around 20% by now. So hopefully this will increase even more, right? So, and then other players are coming in. YTL are coming in. A few other people, companies are coming in to open up solar farms everywhere. Okay. So besides solar, we're gonna have to also to look into other means of generating electricity. Unfortunately for us, we don't have a lot of seismic activity in Malaysia, so we don't have volcanoes. You know, otherwise we can use some of the heat from the ground to generate steam and drive our turbines, like what the Icelanders do, like what the New Zealanders do. But we don't have that. Indonesia have got some small ones going on. The technology is highly expensive, but you know, eventually Indonesia is using it. Okay, and then at the same time, we don't have a lot of big waves going on in around the coastline of Malaysia as well. So we won't be able to generate enough amount of electricity from the waves. You know, so other solutions will probably be wind farming. Unfortunately, again, the only place in Malaysia that you probably get some really constant high winds is actually in Kudat, in Semporna, in Sabah. You know, only a couple of locations in Sabah. Over there, you get big open seas and then really, you know, really big winds. And then constantly the winds are blowing, right? If you're here on the peninsula of Malaysia, yes, you can still feel some wind, but you know, it's seasonal. It comes in from one direction during one particular season, and then it comes in from another direction. So it's not it's not good lah technically it's not economically viable for wind farming. And then the wind speeds are not big enough as well. Therefore, we can only rely upon two things. You know, one is hydro, of course, which we do have a lot. But building big dams is sometimes can be argued upon. You know, it's almost like ethically, it's not really ethical, you know, environmentally, because technically you're leveling a huge amount of land with a lot of forests, okay, and then you're turning it into a dam, right? So technically you're destroying a lot of forests as well in order to get that renewable resource, which is a bit ironic, like, and you know, but having said that, it's something that you need. And then the other thing is, you know, is solar. Solar is something that we have to exploit. Okay, we have a lot of you know, buildings in Malaysia. Perhaps we can use the rooftops of our buildings. Everything is going on right now. You know, the government does have this kind of scheme. Okay, the TNB has got this scheme whereby you can volunteer the roof of your house, you know, for power generation through solar. They will come in and build and fit the solar panels on top of your roof, right? And then you'll be producing the electricity for your own consumption, and then the remainder will go into the grid, and then TNB will be paying you. So all you need to do is simply just have a small amount of capital upfront, you know, to get into the program. So we have that. But here's another problem, you know, food and water. I mentioned earlier just now, food, we're importing a lot from overseas. So somehow or other, we're gonna have to go into more modern means of farming, okay? Perhaps vertical farming in the cities, so that we don't have to rely too much on the rural area. So we can have big tall buildings that produces food, produces vegetables. Animal rearing inside big buildings, I'm not sure. That has not happened before. Perhaps somebody might come up with a crazy idea of having chicken pens and, you know, in a tall 40-story building, and who knows, you know, someday it might happen. But having said that, vegetable farming, yes, is happening now. Singapore, for instance, have got a really good vertical farming going on. They opened up a number of urban farms and then they're planting a lot of vegetables for their own consumption. Because Singapore is perhaps the exemplar like when it comes to importing food. Almost all of the food that they can consume for the population of 7 million people, all comes from overseas. And then besides looking at, you have to look into really good farming techniques, new farming techniques. Okay, you go to Taiwan, for instance, they're using drones, they're using mechanization of their machineries in order to run the farms. Okay, so something that we have to go into and leave behind all the traditional techniques, that do not yield enough amount of crops. So by mechanizing things, okay, making it more efficient, you'll probably be able to produce more yield per acre of land, So rather than getting like 2 or 3 tons of rice per acre right now that we have, can double that or even triple that very easily, okay? But you do require AI, you do require computers to do that, not just hard labor. And then the other one is water. Yes, our water system is at crisis level right now. Crisis level. It might not be in crisis level at other locations in Malaysia, but in Klang Valley is at crisis level. The majority of the people are here in the Klang Valley, okay? There's about 9 million people or so living in the Klang Valley right now. Okay, when I say Klang Valley, it means that Kuala Lumpur and all the, the other small cities all around Selangor, around Kuala Lumpur. Okay, in total around 9 million people now. It's a lot of people. And somehow or other, our water facility, our water infrastructure is not catching up. It is all because of the amount of raw water that comes down through a few tributaries that we have, Sungai Selangor, Sungai Gong, Sungai whatever lah, okay? All these rivers are small. They don't have a lot of water. There's only one big dam, which is Ampangan Selangor, okay? Batu Dam, which is not big enough. It was built a long time ago. It has not been expanded since. And then, the reserve water that we have over there is, I think it's below 5%. It's like 3% also, which is crazy. Whereas, this is the highest amount of industrialization happening in Selangor, in KL. But, the water reserve is so low. And then our piping system is not connected to other states, which is also very bad. This is the reason behind the decentralization of, we have states, okay? We have many states. And every state will look after land, will look after water resources as well. So, they don't connect. Let's say Pahang, they don't connect to Selangor. Perak, they don't connect to Selangor as well. So we can't tap water from Pahang, we can't tap water from Perak, because they're different countries, so to speak. And then there are certain tariffs that you're going to have to pay between Selangor and Pahang. That's the reason why Langat never took off, because there's a lot of negotiations that did not materialize, okay? And then at the same time, it's being pressured by pollution. So our urban planners are not helping as well. Why would they go and designate areas along the river for industrial use, which is, if I can use the word stupid, perhaps stupid is not derogatory, okay, by any means. But that's what it is. We have industrial areas sitting along river's edge, which is really bad. You should be putting them right in the middle of the land so that they can definitely pollute the land, but land can be cleaned up over time. Easier and more than rivers, And then at the same time, rivers are important for our water consumption. That's what it is right now, because we use water from rivers for drinking. But perhaps in the future, we're gonna have to dig really deep borehole wells into the earth, 100 meters or so. By doing that, we can get really nice, clean groundwater. And then, that amount of groundwater should be able to cover at least about 10 to 50% of our consumption that we have right now. So we can have a bit of reserve, which is in dire need in Selangor and KL. So, the Department of Mineralogy and also the Department of Water has been doing a long-term research in groundwater, okay? So they have dug two borehole deck wells in UM, okay? One in the campus in the main campus. The other one here is in where I'm living at, in the 9th College, okay? So it's a deep well, it's about 80 meters deep. The one in UM is about 90 meters deep. The water that comes out is crystal clear and clean enough for you to drink straight away. You don't even have to boil it, right? It comes from the ground. Perak government uses a lot of water from the ground, even though they have a lot of rivers, but they still use water from the ground because traditionally they have been doing so in certain locations in Perak. But over here in Selangor and KL, we have not been doing it. We have not been tapping into that resource. Okay, if you go to some other countries, for instance, America, okay, there's a lot of big cities in America which are tapping water from the ground. Okay, even historically, if you go back into the history, okay, Mayans, I think I mentioned Mayans before, they use water from the ground. A lot of water from the ground. That's the reason why they are able to live in large tropical green forest, inaccessible. There's no rivers whatsoever, but it's a lot of groundwater. And then, I think perhaps that's the future, We're gonna have to start drilling a lot of big wells into the ground and get some really nice, clean groundwater as reserves, just in case if there's water disruption, from the river. So yeah, something that we have to look forward to. So and then at the same time, because of the amount of people that we have, the boom in population and whatnot, the boom in consumption of food and everything else, the boom in the use of cars and emitting carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide and all the other noxious gases into the air. Okay, and because of that, it's exacerbating the greenhouse effect. Okay. It's turning the atmosphere into a shield rather than something permeable. Now it's becoming a shield, shielding all the heat inside the earth. Okay, so all that heat is not able to go out and being released into the atmosphere. So now the earth is warming up. So and then at the same time, the amount of carbon dioxide absorption by the seas, our sea is very important to us. It's been absorbing a lot of carbon dioxide over the millions of years. Okay, but somehow or other, the scientists have found out that our seas right now are not able to absorb a lot more carbon dioxide anymore. Okay, so it's coming up to a certain point whereby there's far too much amount of carbon dioxide. Okay, dah tepu lah if you speak into Malay lah. The eutrophication is at a certain limit that the seas cannot absorb any more CO2s. Okay. That's the reason why the pH level of the sea has been changing. Okay, it's turning more acidic. Previously, it's almost neutral, but now it's more acidic. And then the kind of animals that you get, the sea creatures, the aquatic lives are changing as well. They're swimming away to other locations which are better. And then some of the population of the sea animals are dying out. And then you get algae blooms, in the seas. You get all kinds of other things as well, and the seas are being dumped with a lot of plastics every day. So it's a never-ending story, and then there's a lot of precious environment polluting, pollution everywhere and all the time right now. Okay, so we've gone past a certain kind of limit already. People have been banning about the 450 parts per million of carbon in the air, which is a limit. I think we've gone past that now. If you look at official numbers, I think we're sitting at 520 or so, something like that. So reversing that is almost impossible. Slowing it down, yeah, it could happen, but it will take a long time. It will take a lot of measures, really, really drastic measures from everybody, not just from the big polluting countries, but everybody as well, because everybody else also want to develop, isn't it? We also want to be as developed as Denmark, let's say. We also want to be as developed as the UK. So in doing so, we're definitely polluting the earth a lot more, right? So we have to put into place environmental laws and whatnot in order to really limit the amount of damage that we will do to the environment by developing further. Okay. So, and then we just now I mentioned to you about opening up Sarawak for cultivation, but you don't have to go to Sarawak. For people here on Peninsula, you go just across the straits to Sumatra, let's say. Okay, year in, year out, every single year we will get this haze going on, isn't it? This haze is caused by people opening up land, simply just slash and burning away all the vegetation. Why? They wanted to open it up for farming. Farming of what? Coconut oil, a few other things as well. Palm oil, farming fruits and everything else, right? And then because of that, you got millions of hectares of land in Sumatra which has been opened up. by opening up all this land, including peat land, okay, the ones with really dark soil, okay, that exposes the land to the atmosphere, to the environment, and releasing all the carbon that has been trapped inside the land. Okay, so all that CO2 that Indonesia has been emitting into the sky last year, let's say, or the year before, and for the last 20 years or so, it's not just coming from the forest fires. It's also coming from the land which has been cultivated. You know, they start digging out all the land, releasing all that CO2. And then to make matters even worse, can, you know, those ice countries, I mean, North Canada, Greenland, you know, Iceland, a few other countries as well. They are losing their ice caps, okay, at phenomenal levels. The ice is melting like mad, okay. And this ice, when it became ice a long time ago, it absorbs a lot of CO2. Now, once it starts to melt, all that CO2 comes out, right? Polluting the earth. It's invincible. You don't see it, okay? But you can sort of estimate and measure it. And scientists have been measuring this. And they'll be giving out a lot of staggering numbers, okay? And very soon, because of that alone, plus opening up of the land, plus, you know, emissions from volcanoes and a few other things, including our own man-made emissions from cars and from the cities, the outlook is very grim. Very soon, it's gonna warm up. The earth is gonna warm up really, really high, very quickly. In your lifetime, in my lifetime, in your lifetime as well, the earth is gonna be really hot, right? And then we will be suffering, definitely. And then a lot of places where we've been able to farm will be a lot hotter, a lot drier. So, you know, places in Malaysia where we've been able to farm later on, we will not be able to farm anymore because it becomes dry. So if we do not have really good water management, not just for consumption, but also for irrigation of our farms, we will be losing a lot of our farms. We will be losing a lot of our ability to cultivate crops and for food and whatnot. Okay, so it's totally grim, right? And I'm not talking about 50 years, no. I'm talking about your lifetime. When you say another 15 years, 20 years tops, we'll be seeing all these effects coming in, right? So it's scary, right? And then if you look at some, even though this data is a bit old, but nevertheless, you know, you can see this is per capita, okay, of CO2 emissions. When you do per capita, a country such as China, like here, you know, the carbon emission comes down really drastically. Why? Because they've got about 3 billion amount of people, you know, in China alone. Even though they're polluting this much, but because once you put it per capita, it's only that much. But technically, China is producing this much amount of carbon emissions worldwide. So they are the biggest carbon emitter in the world, okay? But they've been doing a lot of fine, really good work, you know, over the past 10, 15 years or so. You know, they've been shutting down a lot of these coal power plants. And then they've been opening up a lot of solar plants. They've been opening up a lot of nuclear plants, you know, even though it's not that good. But nevertheless, you know, they're moving on towards renewable resources, okay? Sources which are not polluting the earth so much. And then the amount of solar farms that they've been building is almost like 4 or 5 times the amount of global solar farming development every year. They've been doing it themselves, okay? So the European Union, United States, of course, you know, and then India coming in. India, you know, is another interesting story. Again, they've got 1 billion or so people. Per capita emission is so low. It's so low, okay? It's as low as you know, even Nigeria, let's say, you know, again, very, very low because the population is big, right? But you look at Malaysia here, look at the per capita, you know, we're so much higher than Nigeria, you know. Nigeria has got like 80 million people. Why is the problem here? It is because of per capita, you know. It's an economic way of calculating carbon emission. You divide it up, you average it out among the whole population. So Canada, for instance, you know, small amount of population, they only have like 15 million people living, huge country, you know, about half the size of Russia. Only 15 million, okay? And then, you know, Australia, for instance. Where is Australia? It's sitting somewhere. Look, the amount of carbon emission is about that much, but per capita is huge. Okay? Because they've got a small amount of population. They only have about 25 million, I think a bit less than what we have here in Malaysia, but they have a huge country. So when you average it out according to the amount of population, this is what you get lah. It's a bit skewed, but the actual thing is here, right? But the problem is, once you add up everything, it is still a lot. Okay, a lot. So everybody in this earth will have to work together in order to mitigate climate change. Okay, so we have to have carbon trading. We have to have a lot of other things, you know, international laws dealing with carbon emission. Okay, so carbon dioxide is the biggest lah. It comes from everything. Even us breathing out carbon dioxide all the time, isn't it? So you know, the more population we have, the more carbon dioxide we'll be breathing out, isn't it? So technically, we are contributing to the demise of the earth, anyways. The earth will definitely stay. Okay, the earth has been around for, you know, how many million years? I think 100 million years or so, again, you know. So us humans, we've only been in existence on Earth for about, you know, I think the oldest fossils they found about 100,000 years. So we are a tiny speck in the history of the Earth, technically, right? So one day, you know, the humans will die out. I don't know lah, you know, it could happen, but that's what it is lah. You know, it's a bit grim lah for us. So root causes, population growth. This is what you get in India. You go to let's say Bangladesh. Let's say our friend Opita. You know, Opita. I don't know whether where you live, but if you live in Dhaka, Dhaka is perhaps one of the most heavily populated area.
Yeah, I don't live in Dhaka. I'm from Chittagong.
Yeah, it's yeah. You know, Dhaka is one of the biggest population center on earth technically.
Yes.
And you know, one of those is really you know, heavily populated, and the pollution level is skyrocketing as well. Okay, the traffic jam is crazy. Technically, you're not able to go much anywhere. You know, I've got a few friends in Dhaka, and then they've been complaining to me about traffic jam over there.
Yes,
you know, regularly, right?
Regularly. Yes, that's pretty bad. But Chittagong really, is far better than Dhaka.
Of course. But you know, having said that, and there's a lot of drastic things that has to be done in order to really curb this, you know. But you know, in the case of a lot of these population centers, and even if let's say if you go to Japan, you go to Tokyo, Yokohama, that is technically the biggest urban center on earth. They've got like about 40 million people living in that area alone, right? But having said that, you know, you compare that to, let's say, Dhaka, let's say, or you compare that to Lagos in Nigeria, or you compare that to Jakarta even. Totally different kind of environment, isn't it? Okay. But having said that, you know, technology has to come into play. You know, economic equitability has to come in. People have to be able to get enough amount of food on their plates, enough amount of salary and everything else. So it's the sustainable development term comes into play lah. But nevertheless, you know, it's hard work on everybody, definitely. Okay. So we get rapid urbanization. There's a lot of GHG being emitted, greenhouse gases, left, right, and center. And then, you know, there's an increase in amount of energy consumption, of course. So, you know, once you get a lot of people, definitely you need a lot more electricity, okay? The last thing you need is power outage, right? Nowadays, you know, we sort of expect that electricity will be provided to us every single minute of the day, every single day of the year, right? If you get a power outage for about 10 minutes, we'll be crying foul. That's what it is in Malaysia right now. And I'm pretty sure everywhere else in the world as well, though, you know. But if you go to places such as, you know, the West Bank in Gaza, let's say, in Palestine, they only get electricity for about 2 days a week. That is the maximum they can get. So what happens the rest of the week? They don't have electricity. They're living on nothing, you know. But that one is a totally different story, lah. You know, again, they still have got some urbanization going on. Gaza in itself, one whole city, one big city, even though it looks big, it is technically a big city. Got a million of people there, you know. It's about 2 million people living in a small stretch of land, being persecuted by the Israelis, you know. They've got closed borders and whatnot, but at the same time, they don't have enough of electricity. They don't have enough amount of resources. They don't even have enough amount of water for God's sakes, kan. So tough, right? At least over here, we can still import stuff. We can still produce stuff for us to consume. And then at the same time, when I talk about consume, we have this consumerism going on. Okay, consumerism is popularized way back in the 1950s and 60s, okay, right after the World War II. If you go back into history, you know, early on in the 20th century, you know, consumerism started to happen, you know. So we have fashion, we've got trends, you've got fashion in, you know, meaning fabric, clothing, and then you get fashion in interior design, you know, in architecture even for that matter, in cars. So, you know, people are going for beautiful cars, you know, going for really nice clothing, slowly, and then this has boomed right after World War II, okay? So the culture of consumerism really took off in the 1950s onwards until now, okay? And then, you know, it happened in many countries, in America, in Europe, you know, just to make, you know, to feel good about themselves, you know? And then at the same time, they're creatively producing a lot of stuff. Even here in Malaysia, you know, the culture of consumerism has boomed, you know, I think since the 1990s, technically. Before that, it was not as much, right? And then, you know, you go to Japan, let's say, you know, right after World War II, they took off, you know, in terms of technological advancement, in terms of economic prowess, okay? So in the late 50s onwards, 60s, 70s, they were at their golden age of their economic development. So you get this expansion of consumerism happening in Japan. You get cultures such as the Harajuku and things, you know, something like that, like, you know, so many other things as well that you can refer to. So all this culture of consumerism is adding to the problem. When you consume more, when you have consumerism, you want choices. Okay, so for one person, not just one particular T-shirt that you have, you probably want to have like 20 T-shirts of various size, colors, and fashion, isn't it? So it means that you have to produce more. So you don't just produce enough for consumption. It's not a need anymore. It becomes a desire. Okay, so consumerism is exacerbating the problem technically. Okay, but it is something that we can't really run from. It's happening. We have to deal with it. Look at that, you know, Tokyo, the city as far as the eye can see. I had a privilege of flying over Tokyo, over Seoul, over Los Angeles. Los Angeles even more so, and this even larger. Perhaps not as densely populated as this one in Tokyo, but for Los Angeles, it goes even further away. You can't even see the edge of the city. Huge city, huge city. Our Kuala Lumpur, our Klang Valley is big enough for us. Okay, we are reaching 9 million people already. So, you know, very soon we're going into double figures. We're joining all the big cities around Southeast Asia. Okay, you go to Jakarta, you go to Manila, you go to Bangkok. These are the three biggest urban centers in Southeast Asia. They are already breaching 50 million. So, and then, you know, it has created a lot more environmental stresses as compared to us. Okay. Jakarta, for instance, is sinking. Just too much amount of weight. There's a lot of buildings, a lot of people, a lot of everything. And then they've been, yeah, in Jakarta, they've been taking a lot of water from the ground as well, okay, because they don't have enough water from the rivers. So, you know, and because taking too much water from the ground, and the ground is soft, the soil is soft, it's not stones. As here in Kuala Lumpur, we are sitting on limestone, pretty much, our city. Jakarta is not sitting on any limestone at all, it's flat. It's technically alluvial land, you know, good enough for paddy farming. But they've been building really tall 60, 70-story buildings in Jakarta, right? Jakarta is sinking slowly. That is perhaps one of the reasons, you know, why the government is opening up the new administrative center in Kalimantan. Okay, we have some Indonesians here, right? I think we have a couple Indonesians here, right? Isn't it? Ada? We don't. Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
I think, but we do have a few Indonesians in the undergraduate studies again. But nevertheless, yeah, the urban boom is happening, is real, is creating a lot of problems. Okay, but this is our environment that we are used to right now. Okay, I mentioned to you 70% of population Malaysia living in cities. Okay, 7% of Malaysians are used to this kind of environment now. The animals are, you know, different kinds of animals you get nowadays. So, you know, our biodiversity is changing to a different kind of biodiversity. It's more like built environment biodiversity kind of thing, right? So something we have to get used to. Okay. This is something that you probably get in the Middle East, okay? Really nice big malls in the middle, and then all the houses all around you, you know? Would you be able to find your way around it? I'm not sure, you know, you might need a really good GPS system like that. But nevertheless, you know, this is happening everywhere, even in the desert. You know? So it's almost like mind-boggling, you know? Sorry, I got dropped off. Mustaqim, please record it, okay? Let me just share again. Okay. Can you see my slide?
Yes.
Okay, good. So, you know, if you go to South America, let's say, you get a lot of favelas, okay? Favelas are villages which are being built on the slopes. So, you know, the city is expanding on the slopes. And this is happening in many cities in South America. Bogota, Quito, you know, name it, Rio de Janeiro, Sao Paulo is the really big expanse of city like this one here. One of the largest urban centers on earth, okay? So, and then China, of course, you know, if you see China here, you know, this is part of small part of China technically, you see towers which are all the same, you know, they like simple, same kind of cars being put together in a car park. So now you've got, you know, tall buildings which are all similar and being built at the same time, huge amount of buildings, and then being filled up by people. Okay, so it's happening all over the place. And Asia, you know, technically is the urban center of the earth right now, right? How many billion people on Asia alone? You've got nearly 3 billion in China. You've got another billion plus in India. And you know, all the other countries are booming in population as well. You know, Indonesia is almost 200 million people. Philippines, about the same amount of people as well. You know, Vietnam, another 80 million. Myanmar, another 80 million. Thailand, about 70, 80 million as well. So, you know, the population in Southeast Asia alone is booming. In total, we nearly have got about 1 billion people is living in Southeast Asia alone right now. About 1 billion, okay? So you can see the center of population on Earth, you know, total is about 8 billion, okay? But 3 plus 1 plus another 1, that's about 5 billion people living in East Asia and Southeast Asia alone. So, you know, the population problem, most of it is here. We are right in the middle of it, right? We might not really feel it in Kuala Lumpur or in Malaysia, you know, but if you put all the numbers together, the population problem is not to say problem, you know, the situation, unique situation that we are in is actually happening even more so here in Asia, okay? You know, the population of South Korea is very high. Population of Japan is also very high. Can. So you can't run away from it, you know. Asia is where we live, and then we're not going to go anywhere else, right? You know, the next population boom is booming right now is actually Africa, like, you know. But having said that, they are in a unique position whereby they have a lot more land as compared to us. Okay, so the population here in Asia is thriving. Economic development is going on really well. People are becoming richer and richer. More people are moving into the cities to get work and whatnot. Cities are expanding, so resources are limited, right? So we're gonna have to live with it, you know. We're gonna have to address it, but it's real. It's becoming reality now. Okay, let's say we take the carbon emission of New Zealand, for instance. You know, small country by any means, only about 5 million people. I think 3 to 5 million people just about. But the amount of people they have, the amount of animals they have is about like 4 or 5 times more than people. So they have millions of sheep, millions of cows, millions of alpacas and llamas and whatnot. Okay, what do they do with all those animals? They rear all these animals for industry. Okay, to be exported, to be culled, to be exported, and then to harvest the fur and everything else, the wool, yeah, all for industry, for economic means, right? For economic gains. Having said that, animals, just like us humans, we let out a lot of gas, right? So for New Zealand alone, 47% of its gas emission comes from cows, from agriculture, from animals. Okay. And then the rest comes from everything else. Okay. So about half of the carbon emission of New Zealand alone comes from animals. Countries such as Brazil, let's say, they're starting to produce a lot of cattle. Brazil, Argentina, they're producing a lot of cattle for export. Okay, so their carbon emission is skyrocketing right now. Us in Malaysia, we don't produce a lot of cattle. We import a lot of cattle, so we still are complicit to all this carbon emission. But the carbon emission is pretty much done in Australia, in New Zealand, in India, let's say, the countries where all these cattle have originated from. But, us in Malaysia, we produce a different kind of food, different kind of animal. We produce we have about 3 million pigs, in Malaysia. We are the largest producer of pork in Southeast Asia, and we export most of it to China and Japan, Korea, and whatnot. Okay. But the farming of pigs in Malaysia is quite high tech. And reason being, about 20 years ago, when we had a lot of environmental pollution caused by the pig farming, there was a lot of rivers being polluted by the pig farming in Negeri Sembilan, in Selangor, in Perak. This happened when you think about 20 years ago, when you were really young, when you were babies. At that time, a lot of laws being put into place. A lot of technological advancement has ensued after that. So now you have really high-tech pig farming in Malaysia, and then producing a lot of pigs. Okay. Unfortunately, that's not happening with our goat, with our sheep, with our cows. I'm not sure why. Okay, perhaps we're gonna have to move on and look at the pig farming as a good example. To really develop our animal rearing. Chickens, at the same time, has been keep catching up in terms of technology. But yeah, it has to be even better right now, which is they're not reaching the right level of technological advancement right now. But having said that, okay, at least we're not producing that much amount of animals. Okay, we're not. Most of our carbon emission is not coming from animals. Most of our carbon emission is actually coming from industry, because we are heavily industrialized. Okay, and then this is such a small but having said that, if you look at the really dark colors, these are the countries which are really producing too much amount of carbon emission. Okay, us, we are at orange, getting there, becoming a red very soon. So yeah, we have to look out for that. Just about see Saudi Arabia and all the other Arabian countries, they add red, because they consume a lot of air conditioning. They use a lot of air conditioning. They consume electricity for that. They consume a lot of water from the ground. They consume a lot of water from desalinization, let's say. There's a lot of energy, being used in order to clean their water, to process sea water into drinking water. So their carbon emission is really high. Okay, and then they use a lot of cars as well. Public transportation is really poor. So yeah. Is grim over there. So mitigation measures, what can you do in order to limit all this? Okay. You've got a few things that we can do. For instance, like us, architects, we have to help out. Okay. We have to design green buildings, okay, green architecture. I mentioned green buildings many times last week. Here are some examples, okay. So for instance, like this one here, this building here is the Nanyang Technological University, I think it's a business school. And then this one here is in Fukuoka, in Japan. It's this city hall, right? But they built an urban farm plus, a lot of, and a parkland that goes up into the building. And then, they've extended this on the ground parkland onto the building, which makes it even nicer. So and they've been hampered by not having enough space for parks. Okay, so at the end of the day, the architects came with the idea of putting a park on top of the roof. Whereas in Singapore, again, they also don't have a lot of space for greenery, so they have this lawn that goes up onto the roof. Lawns are actually okay, when it comes to doing green roofs. Okay, the blades of grass is able to absorb a certain amount of carbon. Okay, the carbon sequestration capability of grass is quite high. Okay, but it's not as good as, let's say, certain palm trees. Okay, palm trees have got a lot of leaves. The longer, the bigger, the wider the leaves are, the more amount of carbon that it can sequestrate or it can absorb. Right? Grass, very small, but the blades of grass, when you look at it at that particular scale, it's quite wide, it's quite long, thin, able, and then everything is being exposed to the environment as well. So there's a lot of exposure. Therefore, they are able to absorb a lot of carbon. But when it comes to adding to the biodiversity, is not so great lah. Okay, in comparison to, let's say, a fruit tree or palm tree, flowering trees, because of plants, flowering plants and fruit trees and whatnot, they would attract the fauna, okay, the animals, the insects, and everything else to come in. So, in terms of creating biodiversity, what you will get from the Fukuoka City Hall is much better in comparison to a green lawn on the roof of a building. Okay, so if you have something like this here on the facade of a building, it's good. So you've got creepers, you've got many kinds of vegetables creeping down the facade. That will attract the insects as well. Okay, so as architects, you do that thing. At the same time, you have to protect the inside of the buildings from all these insects. Like, you do not want to have any ants and all kinds of creepy crawlies going into your building, isn't it? So you have to make sure that your building is tightly sealed lah. But nevertheless, you have this as a means to mitigate the amount of heat that goes into the building, and mitigate the amount of limit the amount of daylight that comes into the building. Okay. Because over here in the tropical region, when you allow the sun to come into your building, you allow heat to come in as well. Once heat comes into your building, you will have to air condition it, isn't it? So by not allowing a lot of heat to come in, you don't have to air condition it so much. So it's like lesser of two evils kind of thing, right? So you're gonna have to sort of balance it out. Having this vertical greenery is a great idea technically, as a sun shading device, plus to cultivate food, plus to attract plus to attract some animals and insects and whatnot, thus increasing the biodiversity of the urban centers. So we have to look into innovative ways of really not just restoring biodiversity, but also adding to the ecology that we have, adding to it, right? So even better that if you use not invasive species, okay, not imported species, but local species. So when you look into the kind of plants and trees that you want to plant on your buildings, try to go for species which are endemic to Malaysia, okay, to our locality. So besides this, you can also go for pavements which have got planting on it. You get something like this here, even at our own faculty, okay, at the back there in the car park. It does two things. Okay, one, it allows all that rainwater to be absorbed into the ground, which is good. You're reducing the amount of storm water that goes into the drain and being run off somewhere else. So you absorb all that water into the ground, okay, making the ground more better for making the ground wetter lah. Okay, it's not dry, so you're keeping all the and then at the same time, it reduces the urban heat line effect as well. So there's less amount of concrete here. There's less amount of heat being there's more heat that is being absorbed rather than being reflected away. Okay. And then at the same time, you can get solar roads. This is somewhere in Paris, in France, but in China they have built a few hundred kilometers of this stuff. Solar roads. roads are actually one of those things on earth that are, you know, almost all of it is being exposed to the sun, right? Sometimes you do get trees and whatnot, you know, sometimes the road goes into a tunnel, but nevertheless, you know, a large percentage of roads are actually open, okay, exposed to the sun. Why not put solar panels on it, right? So, you know, those engineers, clever engineers in Europe, you know, they've done this in France, and then, you know, China as well, they've done this. They've installed hundreds of kilometers of this stuff. Durable, very interesting piece of technology. Yes, you can argue about the efficiency of the solar panels. What happens if it gets dirty? What happens if it gets cracked? You know, I'm sure the engineers have already calculated all, have already considered all these things. So, you know, this is the future. And then whether or not this is safe, definitely it should be safe. Otherwise, you will not be building it, isn't it? When I say safe, when you brake on this, you know, would you have enough traction? You know, would you have enough friction to make your car stop? I'm pretty sure the engineers have already looked into it. Okay, so it's something to look forward to. Why not you use solar roads in your development? Why not? And then at the same time, you go to Singapore, you get something like this. You know, it's celebratory. It's an event space, but nevertheless, it's an event space that attracts people to go in and be at awe of the environment. Okay, loving the environment. You know, loving the nice music with the birds chirping and whatnot. You know, the water free flowing, running at the back of your ears. You can hear all of that. You know, this happens every night in Singapore. Thousands of people come in and then lie down on the ground. You know, enjoying the light show, enjoying the music, enjoying everything. But first and foremost, enjoying the environment. So during daytime, it's a beautiful park. At nighttime, because an event space. So we as architects, you know, we can create all these opportunities, okay? Not just to restore the biodiversity of our the ecology, not just to add to the not just to restore it, but to add to it, okay? Add value to it. Just now we have something like this, you know, adding value to the ecology. Like this one, also adding value to the ecology. This one here, also adding value to the ecology, but also adding another dimension to it, you know, which is awareness, education, and getting people to love the environment. So this is such a good thing, you know, even though, yeah, people would argue about the aesthetics and everything else, but to me, the benefit of getting people to be aware of the environment, the education benefit is even more important than the aesthetics, okay? So at least now in people in Singapore or the visitors that go to this place, they hopefully they will love the environment more lah, okay? And then you get something similar here in Singapore as well. You know, this is the Park Royal Hotel. They've taken the urban greenery and the vertical greenery to another level. Okay, yes, you have to pay like $700 also, you know, per night here at this particular hotel, which is extremely expensive. But having said that, you know, they have successfully introduced this into a building. So you don't look at your building as just another piece of architecture. Okay, you can technically integrate it into, not integrate it, but you can technically, you know, turn it into an opportunity to add to the ecology. Okay, adding the greenery, not just to the benefit of the animals or the insects, but also to our own benefit. The people, you know, who would go and enjoy the hotel rooms here, you know, they will probably get a nice view of the plants and trees. It's fresher, you know, you can hear all the water instead of the traffic down underneath. So much better, right? And then other measures that you can do, energy efficiency. For instance, like this one here in Barcelona, they turn this big urban park, you know, by the seaside, into an opportunity to get some renewable energy going on. So they created this event space with huge solar panel on top as a roof, okay? But the solar panels does not just provide a space for events, it produces energy, okay? So at the same time, people will be able to appreciate this, okay? It's not sitting just on top of any building that you can't see. It's an event space. You come underneath it, you get to enjoy the shade, but at the same time, you should be able to to be aware of how energy is being generated from solar panels. Okay, something like this has happened everywhere technically. Even us at the Faculty of Environment, we have a small piece of roof canopy with a small solar panel, but you know that can expand even further. And then at the same time here in Barcelona, you get this wonderful pavilion, you know, with a lot of solar panels at different kind of angles, just to show people it's an educational pavilion. But you know, the bottom line is to educate, but also to use the natural potential around the area. Okay, a lot of daylighting, a lot of ventilation as well, because this is by the seaside and it's elevated like this. It's a lot more efficient because you get a lot of ventilation underneath. Okay, and then again in Spain, you know, they do something quite radical. Okay, they put solar panels at a graveyard. When you look at this one the first time, you know, perhaps it looks like an apartment, isn't it? It's not. You can just about see crosses, you know, all the flowers and whatnot. These are graves. Okay, graves. So if you can imagine the Nirvana Memorial Park that we have here in Kuala Lumpur, kan, totally covered by solar panels. You know, perhaps it doesn't feel so much like this one here, lah, because the Nirvana Memorial building is a building, right? You don't see any graves in it, isn't it? This one here is totally exposed. Traditionally, yes, it's been here for, you know, for many generations. And then suddenly the city council, I forgot the name of this town. They are the first ones in Spain that tried to do this. Okay, the city council analyzed the amount of electricity that the city was using. Okay, and then they found out that they are not making enough money. Okay, and they using too much more electricity. They're not making enough money to pay for the bills. So at the end of the day, they came up with a radical idea of mounting solar panels on top of the big graves that they have around the town. And then at first, you know, the population, the people in the town got really angry. You know, to them it's sacrilege. You know, how would you go and install all these solar panels on top of our, you know, grandfather's graves or something like that? You know, so they were up in arms against the idea. But nevertheless, the mayor went ahead with it, installed all the solar panels on top of the graves, and then, you know, within a short span of few months, they started to notice that they are producing enough electricity to power up the town, much of the town, part of the town, and then at the same time reducing the amount of deficit, reducing the amount of debt, you know, the money that they owe to the utilities company. You know, suddenly the people were a bit more susceptible, you know, a bit more open to the idea, lah. You know, now they can make money and at the same time produce enough electricity, and at the same time not wasting the opportunity that they have here at the graves to produce electricity. So it was a win-win situation at the end of the day. Can we do something like this in Malaysia? I'm not sure. Okay, we have a lot of graves, a lot of open graves. Why not we put solar panels on top of graves? Yeah, people will be angry about it. You know, they will say again, this is sacrilege, this is bad. You know, you can't do this to the graves. You have to respect the dead. But why not? You know, why not? Yeah, you can plant trees, of course, for shade and whatnot. You can also plant trees for fruits, can. But it's a graveyard after all. Who's going to go into the graveyard and pick up all the fruits, can? You know, you might as well just put solar panels on top. At least it's well shaded. The ground is well shaded. It should be well maintained, and then it'll be easier for relatives to come in and visit do some visitations at the graveyard. Man, you know, have a think about this, kan. Let's say it doesn't matter whether he's Muslim, Chinese, Indian, whatever lah. You know, for the Muslim cemetery, it happens everywhere. You know, you have flat land, you've got, you know, sloping land, and then put solar panels on top as long as they face a certain location. In Malaysia here, because we are near to the equator, you technically just need to point your solar panels upwards. It doesn't matter whether you tilt it to the east or west or north or south, just put it upwards. Okay, with a slight inclination to the south, you get sun exposure much of the day. And then, you know, especially let's say for Chinese cemetery, okay, A lot of these cemeteries are on the slopes, quite close to some running water, because they've got this feng shui thing going on. Okay, they believe that it's much better to have cemeteries with a view like that. Okay, so why not put solar panels instead? You can generate electricity. Okay, so the ancestors in the graves should be laughing as well. Be happy that they're producing money for the living relatives. Why not? Isn't it? I'm really up for it, but I'm not sure whether anybody wants to do this. And then we have other advancement in technology. For instance, like this one here, you get semi-transparent solar panels, right? So you can do this on a greenhouse. This is in China, of course. In Beijing, you can just about see the business stadium at the back there. Okay, so semi-transparent PV. Beautiful stuff. Something that you would probably want to include into your own design here at the university. Okay, when you do your atriums, when you do your roofing outside of your building, for public areas, why not use this instead of metal deck? And this technology is already available in Malaysia. Unfortunately, there is only one building in Malaysia with this kind of technology, which is the Malaysian Green Tech Corporation building in Bangi that I showed you last week. That is the only building in Malaysia which has got semi-transparent PV, which is a bit yeah, we have to do better lah. This technology is available for quite a number of years now, but it has not taken off in Malaysia somehow or other. So perhaps we should be considering using this for atriums, for part of our roof, to allow light to come in, being filtered down as well. At the same time, you get to generate electricity. Yeah lah, the efficiency of this is not as great as something like this one here. But having said that, it's good for showcasing. It's good for awareness. It's also good for daylighting as well. So you get some kind of filtered and diffused light coming in. So less amount of heat. Okay. So other mitigation measures, you have to go back to the basics lah. Okay. Build climate responsive buildings such as these. Okay, done by Glenn Merkel. I'm just using Glenn Merkel because he's a Pritzker Prize winner. One of the top architects in the world. Okay, so this is what he did, over the 50, 60 years of his career. Beautiful, beautiful buildings, simple, yet very functional, and then very contextual as well. Very contextual. So he understands the context. He understands that the building will have to touch very lightly on the ground. Okay? He understands that the building will have to use the ventilation all around the building. The amount of wind and air circulation that you can have by opening up all the windows and doors. Okay. At the same time, he also understands that you need to shade the windows from the harsh sun. So the roofs are big, the eaves are big. And then at the same time, he also understands that the building will have to breathe, right? So the building material has to be light, has to have a small amount of thermal the thermal property for this. For the building material will have to be able to shield the building from the heat and also not absorb the heat. So he didn't use any bricks here. Quite a bit of wood, a bit of metal here and there. That's it. A lot of big openings. So you can do this technically. This is so easy to do. But you need to be able to read your context. Okay. And then other mitigation measures, look into water efficiency, of course, harvesting of rainwater, and perhaps, go and process the gray and black water as well. So water efficiency, you look into replacing your taps, replacing your shower heads, repairing any leaks, so old pipes which are made of metal, they might have corroded away. You might want to replace them with really good PVC plastic ones. Yeah, PVC plastic is not good for the environment, but technically it's perhaps the next best material. If you compare that to, let's say, lead or metal pipes or ceramic pipes. Okay, so in the old days you will use some ceramic pipes for your sewerage plumbing. Still the best benchmark. Okay, to use ceramic pipes because it's nice and clean and really slippery, but at the same time, it's being made out of non-renewable resource. Okay, clay. If you use plastic, Plastic comes from the byproduct of the processing of oil. As long as you recycle the plastic at the end of the day, it should be okay lah. So hard plastic like PVC should be recyclable. Soft plastics that you use to carry your food, most of it is non-recyclable. You have to stop using those, okay? But for plastic pipes, really hard PVC pipes, that's the latest product that you probably use for piping nice clean water, at the same time piping your sewerage as well. In comparison to metal and ceramic pipes, you're gonna have to change all that. At the same time, you can do rainwater harvesting. Okay, put tanks at your house, put tanks at your building. Have some rainwater being driven into the rainwater tanks, through gutters and downpipes, and service it regularly as well. Make sure everything is clean. So at least the rainwater, even if you don't use it for drinking, you can at least use it for cleaning, for irrigation, for planting your own vegetables or whatnot. At least you can do it. You use it for those, okay? Or you can also use it to clean your clothes if you want to, right? But make sure the water is nicely filtered lah. So if you want to use it for potable usages, let's say like drinking or eating, you have to filter it, you have to purify it, okay? So the same water that you harvest from your roof, which might not be very clean, which might carry some pathogens, some bacteria and whatnot, okay? You have to filter it, you have to treat it, okay? Perhaps use some carbon filters, perhaps use ozone, let's say, if you want to kill off the bacteria. But nevertheless, you just add some filtration and water treatment facilities attached to the water harvesting. Then you can use it for potable usages, okay? Otherwise, just non-potable ones. And then, you can do other things as well. I mentioned just now, gray and black water processing. I think I showed you last week the CH2 building, Council House Building 2 in Melbourne. That building processes the gray and black water for the buildings around it. Technically, you can do the same if you want to, but you're gonna have to invest some money in some machines and some plants, in order to really filter the gray and black water, to turn it into a non-potable source of water at the end of the day that you can release straight into the drains, right? So you can have biofilters. Biofilters are plants and trees that can be used in order to filter the water. So all that gray water that you have from your house, from your building, can be let through this system, filter all that water by means of organic means here, by natural means, and then the water can go straight into a pond or a lake. And this is evident, in the development such as the BedZ development I showed you last week. And increasingly in many other developments, they're using this biofilters, to filter water, especially filtering the storm water. Rather than draining out all the storm water, they will simply just collect that water, filter it, and then let it go into a pond or a lake. And then this rainwater harvesting system here can also be made to look good, such as this one here in Australia. It ties back well with the aesthetics of the building. You can even put it underground. The technology is here. You simply just need to buy it, okay, and use it. And you can also go into another part of green building, which is looking into construction and structure, okay. So you can do adaptive reuse of existing buildings. So you don't just simply demolish your old buildings, you reuse that building for another purpose, okay? And you can also recycle the building materials. You can also reduce the new or virgin materials by using old ones, okay? And then you can also go into IBS, such as these, these are all IBS panels, IBS panels here, IBS floors, again, IBS floors, IBS walls, and then IBS blocks as well. No reinforced columns here, no reinforced concrete beams, just blocks. A few years ago, I designed and built an IBS home, on campus. We go to the engineering faculty, there's one small, low-cost looking kind of building situated beside the new tower. It's all made of blocks. Even the beams are blocks. The columns are blocks. And they're all IBS blocks. There's no reinforced concrete whatsoever in columns and beams. except for the floor, of course. Okay, and it was built within a couple of weeks, really quick. And then there are also other panels as well. You know, you can use something like this one here. This is somewhere overseas, you know. It's polystyrene actually. It's not really good for fire retarding fire, but nevertheless, it's good for keeping out all the heat and keeping all the coolness inside the house. Okay, just imagine your cool box. Okay, where you put all your food inside it, kan? Same thing, but it's not good for fire lah. Right? For our faculty building. Okay. For our faculty building, we have precast concrete beams and columns. Okay. So this is an example here. All these are being transported to the site. Siapa yang cakap tu?
Idea.
Idea. Okay. So, you know, you can have you can have something like this, you know, happening in your building. So you don't just normally you will probably design reinforced concrete beams and columns, okay, but you can change your mindset, use precast ones as well, okay, and then nowadays you can make them to look good as well. You see paneling here, you just simply manufacture the panels and then store them and then move them to a certain location and fit them together. And then this kind of construction is happening in Malaysia already, you know, quite ubiquitous. You know, a lot of buildings, a lot of developments nowadays are using this. A lot of developments are using this, right? Even this kind of development. There are many apartments in Putrajaya, in Kuala Lumpur, are being built using this nowadays. Okay, and all because of there are some companies such as Gamuda, let's say. Gamuda has got one of the largest, I think the largest IBS manufacturing plant in Malaysia. They're manufacturing not just for their own consumption, but also manufacturing for others as well to build. And then, you know, there are other developers such as, you know, the Country Garden. You know, Country Garden, the developer of Iskandar, Malaysia, they built like 3 factories just to cater for their own consumption. So they built 3 factories to manufacture IBS components of many kinds to be used into their own buildings in Iskandar, Malaysia. Okay, and then they've even got international awards for it. But you know, hopefully very soon they should be able to manufacture for other developers to use as well. Okay, not just themselves. And then, you know, there are also some smaller developers such as Sri Pajam. Okay, in Negeri Sembilan, they've been developing a lot of housing estates. If you go to their housing estates, Sri Pajam housing estates, you can see at one corner of the site, there should be a manufacturing center for IBS planks. Okay, so they just manufacture something like this on site, stay on site, and by using gantries and cranes and whatnot, just simply locate everything into place, and you only have a few people working on site to put all these panels in place. Very efficient way of constructing, reduces a lot of wastages, cheaper. Yes, might not be very flexible at the end of the day. You know, the owner of the home will not be able to knock all this down. You know, it'll be very dangerous. You know, there are no columns and beams. Suddenly, once you start putting a hole into this, you know, your house might crumble. But having said that, you know, there should be some kind of black and white. You know, there's a lot of, there must be a manual saying that you cannot knock this down, you cannot knock that down. But nevertheless, you know, this kind of development is happening in Malaysia. You know. And this is also happening in our own factory. You know, it was built using this particular system. And besides that, you know, the future will probably be to manufacture the whole house or the whole small building at the factory and just bring everything and assemble on site, right? In terms of technology, in terms of capability, Malaysia has that already. For your information, we do have a number of plants in Johor manufacturing a lot of these prefabricated components, toilets, parts of the homes and whatnot, all in the factory, and everything being exported to Singapore. Okay, why? Because we don't have this kind of demand inside Malaysia just yet. We don't have a lot of it. The only project that I do know of that has used prefabricated toilet is perhaps the Holiday Inn Express in Kuala Lumpur. It was the building that they are occupying right now is an old office block, about 40-story office block. So they converted it into a hotel. So half of the building converted into a hotel, another half I think is still an office. So in order to turn an office without all the plumbing and whatnot, they use this prefabricated toilets, fitted everything into the floors, and then fitted the rest of the floors with the rooms. Okay, so now they have a really nice hotel, but that is the only one that I know lah. But everywhere else you don't get this. Very rarely that you get prefabricated toilets or components of houses, in Malaysia. So all the manufacturing companies in Singapore, in Johor, they're all producing for Singapore because the demand is pretty much on there. But if you go to other places like Denmark or parts of China, of course, they've been building timber buildings, like 8-story timber apartments using prefabricated timber. It is crazy, when you talk about it. But nevertheless, it has happened. So the technology is moving forward, which is fantastic. And this is the future, right? So no wastages whatsoever. Everything is nicely measured. The carbon emission pretty much happens in the factory, and plus the transportation to the site. But nevertheless, a lot of highly skilled labor, a lot of technology being used, a lot more value and money in it as well. And plus this is the same as well. One level down, in comparison to the conventional construction technique that we have been using all this while. So to end the lecture, I think I have to go into the meeting right now. It's already 10:45. I would like you to go home. Okay, you're already at home. I would like you to open up on the internet and find out some examples of adaptive reuse. Okay, so not just in Malaysia, from anywhere, you just find out, how people have been using old buildings for new usages. Okay, turning factories or warehouses into offices, turning shop houses, old shop houses into hotels, for instance. Find out some of these examples, and perhaps hopefully next week you can share it with me. And then hopefully next week also you can share with me some of the findings that you got for the zero carbon building. If you found some. All right, I've talked too much already. I think I took about 2 hours there. Any questions before I end the lecture? Any questions, anyone? Oh, very easy. Okay. So I'm sorry, the GST Spectrum page has not been updated yet. I'll try my best to get it updated. I've got all the updated documents ready, but I've not uploaded them into Spectrum just yet. I'll do it as quickly as I can. Okay. So if there aren't any questions, thank you very much. All right, and I'll see you next week. Next week we can still have it in the morning, but I would really appreciate it if we change it back to afternoon. Due to the meetings I'll probably have, at least twice a month, Friday mornings. Okay, so never mind. You try to discuss with your friends. We can do like first week and last week in the afternoon, and then second and third week in the morning if you want that to happen. Otherwise, we just keep everything to the afternoon. Easier to remember, anyways. Okay. If there aren't any questions, thank you.